Hey, Myrna. Hello, is anybody home?
Hi, Mr. Haney.
Hi, just checking in.
I was just having a hard time hearing you for a second, Mr. Haney.
Okay, I said I'm just checking in.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
This is Kayla McCord. Good evening.
Happy day, it's Jay. I am here.
Okay, this is Ursula Brashear. Today is August the 4th, 2020. The time is 6 p.m. This is the City of Georgetown, Texas Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Again, Jerry McCullough, can you mute your microphone? Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask Myrna to please call the roll so we can determine which commissioners are in attendance.
Good evening. Aaron Albright, Cherie Heinzman, Kayla McCord,
Here.
Marlene McMichael,
Here.
Travis Perthius,
I'm here.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
James Kaufman, James Kaufman, Alex Fuller, Tim Haney,
Here.
Jerry McCulley,
Here.
Jim Sawyer,
Here.
Ursula Brashear.
Here. So I'm showing two vacancies, Commissioner Albright and Commissioner Heinzman. Mr. Haney was last up on May 5th, so I'm going to move him to the dais. And Alex Fuller was the second biggest gap 6'2", and so I'm going to ask him to join the dais. So we have a quorum, and I will now call the meeting to order. I want to say welcome everyone to this regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Tonight's meeting is being held as a teleconference. The complete agenda and all supporting documentation for each of the items to be dealt with this evening has been posted on the city's website, and it is available in its entirety for public review. In a few minutes, we will hear from Sophia Nelson, the city's planning director, who will walk us through the process of how all parties can participate in this teleconference meeting. Commission members are appointed by the mayor and the city council for the purpose of reviewing land use applications. For some of those applications, the commission will be the final authority. For others, notably those such as zoning and annexation, the commission will act as an advisory body and as such makes a recommendation to the city council for their consideration. The agenda for tonight's meeting is divided into 3 sections: a regular session agenda, a consent agenda, and a legislative regular agenda. As to the consent agenda, any items that the director considers routine and non-controversial or don't require public hearing are grouped together and can be decided on by a single motion. Any item on the consent agenda can be moved to the legislative regular agenda for a full presentation and discussion by the commission, by either a commissioner or any member of the public. Prior to us taking any action on the consent agenda, I will ask if any of the commissioners have any items they want to abstain on, or if they have any items they want pulled from the consent agenda and move to the legislative regular agenda. After the commissioners have acted, we'll then open the floor for any member of the public and ask if any have any items that they want to have pulled and moved to the regular agenda. Each of those items that get moved will be discussed individually. As to the legislative regular agenda portion of tonight's meeting, each item listed for action will be discussed and acted on individually. The process that we follow will be step 1, I will announce the agenda item and the file number for the item being considered. Step 2, the staff will begin by reading the caption for the item for the record, and then they will make a presentation to the commission and to the public. During their presentation period, the commission will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff regarding the item. At the conclusion of staff's presentation and the commission has completed their questions, the applicant will be given up to 5 minutes to make a presentation to the commission. At the conclusion of the applicant's presentation, I will then open the floor for public comments. Ms. Nelson is going to provide you more details about how to join the public discussion here in just a few minutes. But once we have all the names of everyone who would like to speak or to have a say on the matter being debated, we will call those names in the order presented. When your name is called, please begin your comments by stating your name and address for the record. Speakers will have up to 3 minutes to address the commission, unless another person present and signed up to address the commission is willing to transfer their time, in which case an individual speaker may have up to 6 minutes to address the commission. After everyone who has signed up to address the commission has spoken, the public hearing will be closed. Step 5, the applicant will be provided up to 3 minutes of rebuttal time to respond to the public comments if they so choose. Step 6 will be the discussion of the item moves to the dais, and the commissioners will engage in the deliberative process with the goal of adopting a formal action on the item. Okay, with that being said, well, it takes us to our legislative regular agenda, and that is first item is item A. And Sophia, this will be for you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all, commissioners, for being present for this meeting, and those guests that are as part of the meeting. Thank you for joining us. Just a few reminders, please. Please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. When you do speak, please state your name. For the record, we are taking minutes, and so we don't have faces with voices like we would in the council chamber. So I ask you just to state your name in advance of speaking. From the public, if you'd like to speak on an item, I ask you to do one of two things. Either raise your hand using the raise your hand function, and I will be looking for those, and when it's the right time for public comment, I will announce your name. Or you can send me a chat using the chat function with your name, letting me know you'd like to speak on a particular item, and then share that item. If you are on the phone and wanting to speak, at that time we will open public comments once the chair has acknowledged all comments via the raise your hand function and your chat. We will get to those that are on the phone as well. If for some reason, commissioners or guests, that you run into some technical challenges or just have a question regarding a function of Zoom, please feel free to chat me using the chat function. I'll help you in the background. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. That moves us to item B, which is public wishing to address the board. The City of Georgetown, as a routine matter, provides the public an opportunity to add items to a future board agenda by filing a written request with the staff liaison not later than 1 week prior to the board meeting. That'll be for items that aren't regularly scheduled for discussion. It can include any item that the public wishes to address. So we're at that point of the agenda, and at this time, we don't have any parties who've signed up to address the board. So we will move to the consent agenda. This evening, Commissioners, consent agenda consists of items C through U. I need to ask you if any commissioners have any items that they need to abstain on. Do any commissioners have any items that you want pulled from the consent agenda and moved to the legislative agenda?
So this is Travis. I'd like to pull item P. I have some questions on that item.
Okay, so Commissioner Perthius is calling or pulling agenda item P. Any others?
That's it for me.
Are there any members of the public who have any items listed on the consent agenda that you want to have pulled and moved to the legislative agenda? Not hearing anyone. Commissioners, as to the consent agenda, the floor is open to a motion.
This is Jay. I motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented by staff,
With the exception of
second
item
it.
P.
with the exception of item P.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. To have a second?
I'll second it.
And that is, who is this?
Tim.
Oh, Tim Haney, okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda minus item P. Any discussion? Myrna, if you would call the roll, please.
Kayla McCord, Marlene McMichael,
Aye.
Travis Perthius,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes.
Alex Fuller,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Ursula Brashear,
Yes.
and
Take it.
Kayla McCord. I didn't hear if Kayla responded earlier.
I didn't hear it either. So, all right, the motion carries 6-0 with Commissioner McCord not recorded. That takes us to item P. Pull my file here just a second. That is agenda item 2020-15-SDP. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ethan Harwell. I'm the senior planner. Item P, consideration and possible action to approve an application for a site development plan consisting of approximately 0.92 acres, being Lot 1, Block 1, Landgraf subdivision, generally located at 4229 Williams Drive, to be known as Edgestone Automotive, case number 2020-15 SDP. This application is for a site development plan on a previously platted but undeveloped lot along Williams Drive. The applicant obtained a special use permit for an auto repair use at this location back at the end of 2019, I believe. Today, this request is before you for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you have or just give you a general overview of the site.
Since Travis pulled this, let's start with Travis.
Okay, Ethan. So my question pertains to, okay, so this property, I guess, has access to Williams Drive, both from a new right-of-way that's going to be added, and then let's see, which direction is this? Well, if you're looking at the site development plan there on the bottom, next to that 50-foot joint access drive, there's another access point. I just want to make sure that I understand, I know we've had some items that have come up with, connectivity between commercial properties. And I know to the east, you've got Catfish Parlor, and their parking lot has a stub out that extends not quite, but almost to this joint access drive. So on the west side of this property, there's no continuation of this, but on the east there is. Can you go over the reasons for that, and what is the ultimate plan for this cross access drive? Is that going to create a situation where you're trying to get from Catfish Parlor over? Because my understanding would be that they would have to extend that.
Correct. So this site actually went through several iterations of driveways before this design was worked out. Can y'all see my cursor on the screen before I continue?
Oh, we see you. I don't see a cursor.
Well,
Your screen is not shared.
oh, there we go.
There we go.
My apologies. So up in the top left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the main driveway being constructed for the property. This driveway is brand new. There's no existing drive there now. If we come down to the bottom left-hand of the property, it's somewhat difficult to see on these plans, but there's an existing gravel drive here just to the bottom of the drawing that serves two flag lots behind this property. So these two properties have a driveway that comes back off of Williams Drive that they share. Originally, the plan was to to improve this driveway to serve all three properties. However, during the course of the review, we realized that the easement we thought existed there that allowed this property owner access did not exist, and we could not obtain permission from the adjacent property owners to construct that driveway. So the driveway was moved up here to the top left. Because the driveway was moved up here to the top left, that changed the way we looked at our cross-access requirement. So just to the, I believe it's to the west in real life, but at the top of the drawing here on your screen, you'll see the back of some single-family homes here. These single-family homes actually come down and just barely touch the edge of Williams Drive, and prohibit any connection, cross-access connection to the west. So when the driveway was proposed on the east side of the property, down here at the bottom of the screen, no cross-access easement was required because there would be nowhere for it to go, no way for vehicles to travel through this site. But because it ended up going up here, on the west side of the property, we have to plan for that cross-access easement here. So you'll see they've provided the cross-access easement. You can kind of see drawn in here on your screen if you have a good feed, that takes you from this driveway through the parking lot and then to the stub. In the future, if the adjacent properties to the east develop, then that stub would be continued. So theoretically, I can't remember exactly what is between this site and the Catfish Parlor, but theoretically, yes, it would be possible to have a connection from the Catfish Parlor to the site.
Isn't the only thing between Catfish Parlor and this location a strip of land, a 50-foot strip of land?
That's how I see it.
It's the driveways into the properties to the back?
Yes. So you're correct. So if these properties at the back were ever developed into any sort of commercial use, they would be required to reconstruct this driveway to meet current code, and they would provide a stub. They would come up here to meet this pavement stub to provide access.
So by the property owners that gain access by that 50-foot right of way not agreeing to provide access, that eliminated our requirement for the through access easement. I just know that not too far to the east in Deer Haven, this was a so I saw it here again, and I want to make sure that I understand what we're doing here.
The opposite. So the opposite of what you just said. The code requires that when one commercial property develops next to another commercial property, they make that connection between the two. So if the only driveway into the site had been on the east, here at the bottom, there would have been no commercial property on the west to connect to. So there was no need for the easement or the access. But because the driveway was moved to the west, there was a commercial property to the east to connect to.
So it is the existence of the residential structure that precludes the necessity for the connection?
It was not the existence of the residential structure. Those two lots are two flag lots. And so that actually stack behind this one. So the lot here in the middle is zoned agriculture, but it is used and housed with commercial businesses. And that is what triggered the requirement.
Okay, but in terms of the connection at the top of this drawing, because this dead ends into a residential structure, there was no requirement for this what you're referring to as this west connection to make any connection points to the adjacent property.
Correct.
Is that your nature of your question, Travis? Is what happens up at the top of this drawing, or what happens down at the bottom?
It has more to do with what happens at the bottom, because he says if the other properties were to develop, but that 50-foot strip of land is, even if it's reconstructed into a new drive, it's not going to change. So we've got a access easement on this property here, and then you can't see it on this map, but on the other side of the drive is Catfish Parlor, and they've got an existing. So it seems to me that, all of this is complete up to the point of the through access driveway, which is not going to change. It may look different, but it's not going to change. Also seems like it's going to create a real traffic hazard right there, but I just wanted to understand our process on how we got to this site development plan.
Are you satisfied with the answers that you've received?
Yes. So
Okay.
it sounds like, let me just make sure, Ethan. So it sounds like if they were to do something else with those flag lots and those were to become, a different zoning than ag, they would have to rebuild that driveway, at which time this would all have to be connected.
Correct. They would be the missing link between this property and the Catholic property.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. Any other commissioners have questions regarding this item? If not, is the applicant wish to address this item?
I don't believe they're here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's fine. Then let me, because we've moved to the legislative regular agenda, let me open a public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to address this item? Not hearing anyone, I'm going to close the public hearing. And commissioners, as to this item, the floor is open to a motion.
This is Travis. I move to approve the site plan as presented.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Perthius to approve the application as submitted. Have a second.
This is Alex Fuller. I'll second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Fuller. Any questions, any discussion? Myrna, call the roll, please.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Marlene McMichael,
Yes.
Travis Perthius,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Alex Fuller,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Ursula Bashir.
Yes. So the motion carries 7-0. That takes us to item B, and this is file 2020-ANX or -2-ANX. Ethan?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item V, public hearing and possible action on a request for a zoning map amendment to zone 20.26 acres out of the Isaac Donegan survey, abstract number 178, to the planned unit development PUD zoning district with base districts of local commercial, C1, office, OF, and the scenic natural gateway overlay district upon annexation for the property generally located at 3701 West State Highway 29. So this is actually an update to a request the commission considered back in April. And as you'll remember, and as you'll see on the screen, this is part of an annexation request. But again, tonight, we're not considering whether or not this property should be annexed, but we're considering the zoning, proposed zoning designation for the property if it were to be annexed. So back at your April 21st meeting, the commission considered this request and ultimately recommended to the city council that the request be denied. The request consisted of about 11.6 acres of local commercial zoning at the front of the property along the highway and roughly 8.5 acres of office zoning at the rear of the property. During your meeting, concerns came up about the proximity of the commercial development next to single family and some issues very specifically related to this development about how any commercial buildings may impose on the single family homes with our standard dimensional standards and some specifics about what the connection at Cross Mountain Trail in the southeast corner might look like. The request before you today is a request for planned unit development. So the applicant has modified the request to be adapted to the planned unit development format. So they have slightly reworked the configuration of the zoning districts. And as we'll talk about later in the presentation, they have proposed some standards that they believe are a nice update to the request and address your concerns. So here you'll see that the local commercial zoning will be located up at the front of the property and the office at the back. But as we'll talk here in just a moment, the project has been divided up into 3 areas with a slightly different character that still complement each other. You'll remember that the property is located on the southeast corner of Highway 29 and Parkside Parkway. Currently around the property, it's mostly undeveloped. You have the single-family neighborhood, the Water Oak neighborhood, to the southwest of the property. And if you've driven out Highway 29 recently, you'll see the food truck park to the east of the property, and you'll see the gas station that's recently opened up between this property and the Zoot pet boarding facility. This property also sits at a very interesting location because of the connection it has to the series of single-family neighborhoods that are being developed along Highway 29, but also because it sits right there at the top of Parkside Parkway, which will eventually connect down to Leander Road and then down into Leander. On our future land use map, this property does sit in our community center designation and partially in our mixed density neighborhood designation. These community center areas are really for small to mid-size commercial developments that serve and cater to the needs of Georgetown itself. The intent of these is to not necessarily pull regional traffic, but to pull local traffic. We also discussed at our previous meeting that this property sits at an interesting location because of the need for a transition of land uses here. How do we transition from a more intense commercial use along the highway at what will be a major intersection in the future to these single-family homes that sit behind it? Currently, the property has contiguity with the city limits along Highway 29. It is in the city limits, but no other property around it is in the city limits. Interestingly enough, though, the Water Oak Development Agreement requires that the single-family portion of the neighborhood be developed in accordance with our standards for our typical residential single-family zoning district, and the commercial parcel just to the northwest of this one be developed in accordance with our local commercial zoning district. As I mentioned before, the applicant has, to adapt to the PUD format that he's now requesting, has divided the area into 3 different categories. Before we had just the C1 area and the office area. Now we have 2 C1 areas and a 3rd office area. The applicant has made some changes in the PUD we'll discuss to really focus this as a retail and restaurant area, to focus those permitted uses on that. And then in area B, they have expanded upon the list of permitted uses in this area and made some design allowances you'll see here that would allow them to develop this more as a flex office kind of space with uses that you may typically more see in a business park, but are still appropriate and compatible with the other uses proposed in area A and area C. Area C hasn't really changed much from the original request. The intent is still to provide professional office space and to leave the other retail and kind of light manufacturing uses to the other areas. In area A, in order to make it more compatible with a, to more focus the area on the retail and service uses that we're promoting there, the applicant has chosen to add a few uses that are generally compatible and more retail in nature that you see in the bottom left in blue. And they have chosen to prohibit some other uses that may be incompatible with that kind of retail-oriented vision they have in the area. So for example, they have prohibited assisted living facilities, some uses like landscape garden sales that typically have a lot of outdoor storage, or fleet vehicles like home healthcare services. And then in that middle column under permitted with limitations, you'll see that they are prohibiting any kind of loading areas, outdoor display, outdoor storage, anything that may be unsightly. In area B, to promote the kind of flex office environment that they desire there, they're prohibiting a very similar list of uses, but they're also adding in some uses that we more consider to be light business park uses that you typically don't see in this zoning district. However, after analysis, we have no reason to believe that they would pose, and with any conflict with the other uses in the C1 district, especially with the design standards that the applicant has proposed specifically for Area B. Area C is the office area, and the applicant really has not proposed any changes to the list of permitted uses here. They have striked through a few of the permitted uses that are more auto-oriented or slightly more retail in nature, like the boutique hotel, restaurant, and the dry cleaning service. But for the most part, you still have professional offices. The applicant has also locked in some of the requirements regarding site design. So if we start at the top and work around clockwise, the applicant has agreed to zone into the scenic natural gateway overlay to provide the similar level of landscaping that you see on other further down the State Highway 29 corridor. The asterisks you'll see throughout the property are meant to be outdoor seating areas. The applicant has locked themselves into providing 12 of these. These are also very nice when you know that the applicant has agreed to save 95% of the heritage trees on this property. They've worked diligently to lay out the site plan to save those really large, rare trees. Down in the southeast corner, the applicant has proposed their plan for the extension of Cross Mountain Trail. Our code does require that this either be extended or connected. What the applicant has done is they have connected to Cross Mountain Trail, but in a way that requires vehicles to make lots of turns through the site to discourage through traffic. And they propose a masonry wall with a little bit of signage there as a nice entry into the neighborhood. And the biggest feature of this PUD is probably the treatment along the border with the single family homes. The applicant is proposing our standard 15-foot planted buffer yard, but they are proposing some language to require them to save as many of the existing trees in that area, those mature trees that are already nice and big, provide a lot of screening as possible. In addition to that, the applicant is proposing to extend our standard building setbacks based on the height of the building. So typically in our office district, our C1 district, the typical rear setback to a single family home is 25 feet. Here, for a one-story building, the applicant is increasing that to 50. This is comparable to the height allowed in the office district, which is 45 feet. For a two-story building, they propose a 75-foot setback. Those two-story buildings would have to be 75 feet away from the property line. And for any three-story buildings, which is possible within the permitted height, they would have to be 250 feet away. So the request was reviewed against our criteria for rezoning and a PUD, and we found that the proposed use and layout of the site is compatible with the adjacent properties and is consistent with our comprehensive plan. It provides and uses in a layout that matches up very well with the policies our comprehensive plan puts in place regarding the community centers and transitions of uses. And we found that it fully complied with 5 out of the 6 of our criteria for a PUD. The site is not necessarily large enough to provide a variety of uses, non-residential and residential, but we feel that, as I showed earlier, it fits into the series of residential development along Highway 29 very nicely. On that same line, the site is not necessarily to be providing public open space like a park, but they do provide for cultural and recreational uses like restaurants, places of worship, art studios. There's no reason that those private spaces couldn't go in there, but there's just not quite the space to provide for the public spaces. Interestingly though, the applicant does set a high standard for themselves in the PUD to make sure that the site is well connected to the neighborhood and to the other properties around it for vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic. And that pedestrian sidewalk program throughout the site does connect with those 12 open spaces they're requiring of themselves. We did re-notify for this request. At the time that the agenda was posted, we had not received any letters in support or opposition, but since the agenda has posted, we've seen 3 comments come in favor of this PUD and 1 comment in opposition of this PUD. This PUD request does require a public hearing. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant is here as well with a short presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. Commissioners, any questions to staff? Let me ask one in the absence of any others. I noted that you're showing a masonry wall. Can you go back to the part, right there? In the area where you're showing, you have another slide that shows a masonry wall there along the office area. You recall that? Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, outdoor gathering spaces screened from single family homes with masonry wall. Where is that, please?
It's not shown specifically on this concept plan because it is so conceptual. But what the applicant has locked themselves into, where they can speak to more, is that any place along here where a single family home may have a view of an outdoor space or something unsightly in that office area, they'll construct the masonry wall.
So look up at the area A, top. You've got the lot 6 up there. Would that lot qualify for that masonry wall, or is it only applied to the area that's the OF, the area C?
I believe it only applied to area C. But I believe there is some language about a buffer in area A. If we go back and look.
Well, the reason I'm asking the question is the only negative comment that I've seen come up in this go around is the spacing between that proposed building and the lot 6. And as I read this map, I see that if there's a building constructed there, it's a single story structure in that corner, correct? Because isn't the 2-story setback line clip that building?
Yes, sir. The 2-story setback does.
So we'd have a single story in that location. And I'm just curious if you're looking at producing a masonry wall up here as a buffer, could we not get that included to cover lot 6 up there? Because it looks like it's, 40 or 50 more feet of wall space.
Yes, sir. We can certainly look at that. Let me read through the PUD here. I know there is some language specifically in there, and so I want to be able to tell you exactly.
Okay. While you're doing that, talk to me about the purposes of the SUP requirements, which we've added to the ordinance, which specifically have been oriented towards automotive uses, to state that if somewhere else in town you wanted to put in an automotive oriented facility, you'd have to get a special use permit. Would the approval of this PUD circumvent that as a future item?
Yes, sir, it would. So the ordinance you're speaking of was approved last summer after a slew of very similar auto-related uses popped up on a certain corridor of town. So the car washes, quick lube places like a Jiffy Lube, and even some auto parts stores like an AutoZone. So yes, by writing it in that these would be permitted by right in this area, it would circumvent the requirement for the SUP. The two
But that-
auto-related,
Before you skip off on your next thought there, but the neighborhood has been made aware of these proposals to move those SUP into the permitted by right. Am I correct? I mean, this has all been public.
yes, sir. I know that the neighbors have reviewed the PUD. I've only
Okay.
received one question specifically about the auto-related uses, though.
Okay.
The uses that are
that-
proposed,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
the uses that are proposed, the auto parts and sales indoor and auto repair limited, those do not allow any work to be done outside. They do not allow vehicles to be left overnight, and they do not allow vehicles or any sort of outdoor storage.
I noticed that in area B, you have a requirement that any of those exterior roll-up doors can't be towards the back of the property or towards any residential area.
Mhm.
Does that apply also to this area A up here?
No, sir, it does not. It's only written to apply to area B. That may be a good question to follow up with the applicant on, because I know he has a very specific type of user that he envisions for area B.
Okay. All right, commissioners, anyone else have questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, this is Alex Fuller, and for Ethan, what is the traffic flow around this proposed project?
Along Highway 29.
Okay, but once you exit into this area, how do they propose traffic flow on the site?
Gotcha. So they're proposing one driveway onto Highway 29, right here in the center of the site, right above where it says Area A.
Right.
From there, that main drive feeds into several other parking lots and several of those cross-access connections that we discussed earlier to adjacent properties. So
Okay.
right here along the border of Area A and Area C, you'll see another cross-access connection to the property to the west. Then if we follow the, what's up here, right along the border of Area B and Area A, you'll see another connection to the property to the east.
Is that intended to be made into a public access or?
It won't be public in the traditional sense of the word, but they will be required to dedicate an easement that allows public traffic to travel through this site to get to an adjacent property.
So how about the down at the bottom into the neighborhood? How is that different than it was before?
Excuse me. So right now, the Cross Mountain Trail ends in a cul-de-sac with a small stub off at the end.
Right.
Our code requires that they have to complete this connection, either by extending the street through their site to another property, or by terminating it, either with a cul-de-sac or a hammerhead. So what they're proposing here is actually a hammerhead that will need to be dedicated as a public street eventually, and that counts as the terminus of the road. Then from there, as you move into the parking lot, that will be a private drive.
And when they first developed this site, will traffic be able to access the neighborhood down there?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sir. The traffic will be able to flow from this site into the neighborhood, but there are very few, even if they had, satisfied the requirement to finish the street another way, there still would be a connection there.
Okay. And
But
the neighbors don't have a problem with that?
Not to my knowledge. No one has spoken to me about any concern there.
Okay, thank you.
One other quick question for you, Ethan. Is this a phased project? Am I correct to assume that this would be built out over several years' time?
I believe so, yes, sir. Our development code will allow them to begin planning for the entire site all at once, and then they will phase it, with a logical progression of utilities.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, if the applicant's here, welcome, good evening.
Good evening. This is Don Poole with 2P Consultants, representing the project. How are you?
Doing well, Don. We welcome you being here. Before you start, let me just tell you that I appreciate very much the fact that your client took our comments and went back and came back with a PUD. That was not an inexpensive thing to do, but I appreciate him doing it.
Yes, sir. He definitely wants to develop this as friendly to the neighbors and the environment as possible. So he really didn't find that as a insult to go back and rework it. He found it as something to a challenge to make sure we incorporated those restrictions so that the neighborhood would actually have a good product with them. So I think, did you guys get the shared screen yet?
We did. We can see that now.
Okay, good. So this is actually a presentation that the client developed and presented this to the HOA as well. So they've seen it. Naturally, this is a conceptual layout. You can see one of the things I think that you were concerned with was the hammerhead stub here. And you'll notice that traffic going through this site has to meander through quite a bit to actually go through here. And this over here is actually a dead end. So it discourages too much traffic from going through and trying to exit through the subdivision or enter through the subdivision. We want to make sure that there's connectivity and flow through the subdivision, but we also want to discourage any people that want to drive through just as a shortcut, which if you've been through this subdivision through that back way, it's really not that much of a shortcut anyway. It's a lot easier to actually go through out here. I also wanted to point out that we are doing a right turn decel lane into this development. And on this color exhibit, you'll notice this area right in here was the area where we were talking about overhead doors facing the inside of the property and not facing the outside of the property. If there are overhead doors, this will be more used. There's no loading docks. This will be more like say a florist shop goes in here and they have their delivery truck come back here to pick up some flowers and go drop them off. They won't be parking along the front so that the residents won't see a bunch of vehicles with, names of businesses on them. So we go back to the setbacks, and Ethan explained that very well. I wanted to make sure everybody understood that we were increasing those setbacks, and you are correct on this one right here. It is a one-story building. It cannot be a two-story, and we're definitely glad and would be willing to add a masonry wall along this drive or even in front of it right here, if that would make everybody more comfortable. And that's that lot 6, I believe. That was area 1. We're not permitting any loading docks, senior living, landscaping, boarding. We've tried to exclude as much as possible and make sure that this stays more for restaurant areas to serve the neighborhood and all the neighborhoods that are going up in the area. There's quite a few out here popping up. The flex area here was back to the color exhibit, was more for those supporting commercial things, florist, maybe a dance studio, something like that, to where they might want to have a roll-up door in the back for some small deliveries, but no loading docks. And of course, the office. This is renderings of the type of buildings that the developer is looking at doing. You know, it just kind of shows you that he's wanting to have a good A-class type building, nothing that's, you know, it has all the articulation and shade and everything that the city requires. He wants us to be a really nice development for the neighbors and for the community. Did anybody have a question?
I do. Don, if you'd go back to the section A, and let's go back and look at those uses again, please. All right. Yeah, I'll go right there. You're showing, go back. I'm sorry, go back one more, please.
I'm sorry, my mouse keeps kind of skipping on me here.
Yeah, I understand. So, and let me tell you the nature of my question. When you talk about the proposed uses, here we go. Proposed uses shall be permitted in this area. Office, showroom, automobile parts and accessories, and automobile repair services limited.
Yes, sir.
The pictures that you're showing us are of a mixed use facility with multiple uses proposed. What my question is, how do we make sure that area A doesn't turn into a complete set of automobile repair shops? Can we limit the percentage of the square footage you propose to build there?
Yeah, we can definitely do something like that. We can limit it to, you know, a very small percentage in area A to try to, you know, the developer just wants to keep the options open. You know, this whole area is developing, as you all know, and there's a lot of residential going on, and there's a need for everything going to be happening for commercial use along 29, as opposed to driving all the way into town. So yes, I definitely believe we could put some limitations on those two uses.
Could we say something like not more than 20% of the total square footage in those areas, you know, for those for those things that would normally require a special use permit?
Yeah, we can do that.
Do you know, have an idea of about how many square feet we're talking about? I mean, I don't know if 20% is a good number, if it should be 200%. I just wonder if there's not some way to make sure that we don't face the prospect of a whole bunch of auto zones going in here.
No, I understand. I think we could probably work with Ethan and come up with some kind of percentage.
Well, we have to make a recommendation to the council, and I'm snatching a number from the air when I say 20%. But I mean, to me, as long as you're willing to say, look, we don't want the whole thing to be that.
Yeah.
And I think we can work with you on that. I can only speaking for myself. I don't know what the rest of the commission is going to want to do, but to me, that would be an important factor.
Yeah, we definitely don't want the whole thing to be that. I think I could easily say that, you know, 25, 30%, or even just limiting it to, you know, one use of automobile parts and accessory and one use of automobile repair service.
You said one event?
Yes, sir.
But if I get 100,000 square foot paint shop in there versus 2,000 square foot restaurants, I don't like that.
Okay. Well, we could definitely limit it to a percentage then.
Well, that's just a suggestion. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Poole? If not, thank you, sir. We appreciate your coming up here this evening.
All right.
And this is a public hearing. So at this point in time, I will open the public hearing and start. Sophia, do we have people that signed up to speak?
I do not have anybody that has signed up to speak. However, I did have a question for that came in from Roger Chappell, as well as one from, let me get the name correct here, from a Rosemary. And I would like those people, if they would like to have their question answered, this is the opportunity to speak up.
Good evening, Commissioners. Roger Chappell here. I hope you're all doing well.
Thank you, Roger. Good evening. Welcome.
I live at 104 Clear Ridge Cove here in Water Oak, and I was just outside of the area that receives a notification on this. But of course, I'm pretty active with the neighbors, and I knew this was going to come up. And a lot of the comments that I've been reading regard the lighting, specifically at nighttime. Do you know, or would the applicant know what type of lighting they're planning and how these buffer zones will help try to reduce lighting problems for the neighbors whose property back up to this project?
Roger, I don't think we can give you an answer on that this evening, but let's see if we can get to that as part of the discussion here in a minute.
All righty, thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
The person in the audience who was making a comment informed me they don't have a mic, so I'll read their question into the record.
Okay.
This question is from Rosemary, and she asked, in the hammerhead, what are the parallel lines crossing the road? Are these speed bumps? They also have similar lines at the front entrance and on a few other places. So she's asking the applicant for the opportunity to understand what those are.
Those look like crosswalks, don't they?
That
Be
is
where
correct.
I would anticipate them.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this? Any other questions or comments? If not, then I'm going to close the public hearing, and we have a applicant can have a response here. Would you use this section to please address the question about lighting?
Yes, sir. We were just going to handle the lighting in accordance with the code, which is very strict when it's adjacent to single family. In addition, obviously, we've got the buildings set way farther away than what they're allowed by code, which would definitely keep the lighting away from those single family homes.
Okay, thank you very. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ethan. I can speak more to our lighting requirements if you like.
Let me get past the public hearing part of this, and we'll address that. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to close the public hearing if I haven't already. And commissioners, as to this item, I'd like to get a recommendation, a motion. Give me a recommendation, then we can open it for discussion. So, can I get a recommendation to the City Council?
I'll move to approve it.
Who is this? Oh,
Tim?
Tim Haney. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. A motion to approve the application as submitted.
Jay, I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Warren. Okay. All right, discussion. Any commissioners, any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Okay.
This is
Mr. Fuller.
Fuller. Yes, I guess directed to Ethan. Does the code require some kind of like those low light amber kind of street lights and stuff in this situation? Not the bright white ones?
Our code doesn't necessarily speak to the type of lighting or the color of lighting, but it speaks to some design requirements for the fixture and for height of pole lights when adjacent to residential development. So as a part of the site plan review process, the applicant will have to provide a photometric plan and they have to demonstrate to us that the level of lighting at the property line is not above 3 foot candles. They must also provide to us examples of the fixtures they're going to use. The fixtures cannot allow you to see the actual light source, the bulb itself, through the side. The sides must be opaque. And the cone of light they produce can't cross property lines. And then the other real requirement here that's relevant is our restriction on pole lighting along the property line with single family homes. Any place where they have a pole light, typically like you typically see in a parking lot, they cannot be higher than 15 feet.
All right, thank you. I'd like to recommend that they try to use a low glare light of some type in this situation. If I was living back there, I would not appreciate blinding light 24 hours a day, or at least during the night. Thank you.
Okay, other comments? So I want to pose this question to Tim. You made the motion to approve the application as submitted. I would like to make a motion to amend that to require the approval of this application with the addition of the masonry wall along lot 6 where it joins this project, and with an amendment to limit the special use permit items to no more than 20% of the total floor plate for area A specifically.
I'm
Would you
okay
be
with
willing
that.
to- Okay.
Yeah.
So I need a second to that.
This is Kayla McCord, second.
Okay. Any discussion or comments? Alex, this is a good time for your thoughts about lighting. I think the staff is saying that they have a standard that basically attempts to limit the impact. I don't know when you'd get another shot at saying whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Well, I have just noted in some areas where the concern about trying to limit the excess lighting, they use those amber lights, and cuts the glare down significantly. And I don't know if that cost, I don't have any idea about cost, but if that was a possibility here, I'm sure the neighbors would appreciate it. I don't know if we have the authority to require that.
I don't know if that's a zoning matter.
The lighting would be a zoning matter, Mr. Chairman.
It is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I want to add a third item to, Tim, I'd like to ask you to consider adding a third item to the amendment, which is that we encourage the lowest light impact possible on the adjoining properties. Is that going to give you something to work with, Ethan?
It'd be more helpful if you could be specific about a certain location on the property or a
I'm
certain
thinking
type.
on the boundary with the residential.
I might, if I was writing this, I might draft it to be more specific about the area between the buildings and the property line with the single family homes.
That would be a wonderful thing for you to add. So you're saying, what I need to say is to encourage the lowest lighting possible in the area between the single family residential and the development on this site? Along the west and south boundaries?
Chair Sophia Nelson here. May I try to help with this?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think it may be helpful. The word encourage would relate something that's optional, not a mandate. And if I understand the intent here is that the commission is trying to find language to reduce the amount of light that would impact the single family residential neighbors.
Correct.
And what Ethan shared was just, it appeared to be the requirements for the code that limited the overall height of the light fixture itself at the property boundary. But you guys are really concerned about the glare that may transfer over. Is that correct?
I think that's correct.
Okay. If I may, I think this is an excellent opportunity for the applicant to address how they can address this requirement. I think the other possibility is you can write in a requirement that says 0-foot candles should be present at the property line. And that is something that we can review their photometric plans, and we can ensure that at the property line, regardless of the fixture type, that they have 0 light levels.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that probably solves.
You may also consider the type of fixture. You may say that any fixture needs to be completely shielded, so light source is not visible. Or you may even say that any decorative lighting around the pond, any lighting there, must be a bollard lighting that has to be lowered to the ground rather than pole light.
Mr. Poole, are you still available?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Having
sir.
heard what we are saying here, if we come back with 0-foot candles at the property line, completely shielded light fixtures at the property line, and no pole lights in and around the water feature, are those things that you can accomplish?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay. All right. So Tim, let me restate my motion. I would like to amend your motion to approve to require the addition of a masonry wall along the property line with lot 6 to limit the special use portions of Zone A to no more than 20% of the total footprint of Zone A. I
didn't understand, Ursula. The
So-
20% of the
total
auto
footprint.
shop?
No, yeah, so that
Mr. Chairman, you may say,
anything. I'm sorry.
Mr.
Just
Chairman,
let
you
me
may
finish.
say 20% of the total building square footage.
That's correct, of Zone A. So if they come in and build 400,000 square feet, 20% of that 80,000 square feet could be inside of that category of uses that they moved out of requiring special use permits into allowable.
Gotcha.
But it's only for that portion of Zone A. It does not apply to Zone B or Zone C. And then that, as to the lighting permitted for the project, it'd be required to obtain a 0-foot candles at the property line shared on the residential portion of, which would be the west and the south line of the project, that any light fixtures installed in that area be completely shielded, and that we have no pole mounted lights around the water fixture in the southwest corner of the property. Would those amendments be acceptable to you?
Yes.
Jay, you seconded that. Would those be acceptable to you?
Sir, yes, sir.
Kayla, you seconded this. Would that be acceptable to you?
Yes, I second
Okay.
the restated motion for amendment.
Okay. So we wound up with a recommendation to the city council. So let's ask, any other discussion, any other comments or questions? So our recommendation to the city council is to approve the recommendation for a planned unit development zoning district at this location with the additional provision of a masonry wall extending to and including all of the boundary of lot 6 to limit the total special use permit uses in zone A to no more than 20% of the total floor plan allowed in zone A. That lighting be restricted to 0-foot candle outputs along the property line on the west and south portion of the property. That light fixtures be completely shielded at those locations, the west and south property lines, and no pole lights around the water feature in the southwest portion of the property. Myrna, call the roll, please.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Marlene McMichael,
Yes.
Travis Perthius,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Alex Fuller,
Yes, I do appreciate the applicant too.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Ursula Brashear.
Yes, so the motion carries 7-0. And that takes us to item W, which are our discussion items. Sophia, good evening. Any items or announcements or updates that you need to make us aware of?
Good evening. No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, just a quick note there. There's a city is conducting a survey online of the proposed transportation bond package items. And if you get a chance to go take that survey, it would be greatly appreciated. We've got till the 15th, I think, for that to be done. Alternate members, any questions this evening about any of the actions or matters that we considered on this agenda?
No
This is Jerry
questions.
McCauley. I don't have any questions. I just thought it was fascinating to watch how this was put together using the PUD process and the excellent way the commissioners worked together to resolve issues with the developer.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Appreciate that. Any other comments? If not, I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Who's that?
Tim.
Tim, okay. Second,
Second, this is Alex.
Alex, okay. Myrna, call the roll, please.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Marlene McMichael,
Yes.
Travis Perthius,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Alex Fuller,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Ursula Brashear.
Yes, and so we are officially adjourned at 7:16. Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate you being here this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.